Hello, everyone. I'm Carol Fleck, and on behalf of the ADDitude team, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled The Explosive Child, Collaborative and Proactive Solutions for Parents. Leading today's presentation is Dr. Ross Greene. Dr. Greene is a clinical psychologist and best-selling author. He is widely known for developing an evidence-based model of care called Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, or CPS. It's based on the premise that a child's problematic behavior occurs not because the child is being deliberately defiant, but because a parent has imposed expectations that the child simply can't meet. Dr. Greene's model of care has been implemented in countless schools and in residential and juvenile detention facilities with positive outcomes. Dr. Greene is the author of several books, including The Explosive Child, Lost at School, and Raising Human Beings. He is also the founding director of the nonprofit Lives in the Balance. In today's webinar, we'll discuss what triggers difficult or oppositional behavior in children and what caregivers can do to inspire change. We'll explain why using rewards and consequences may not motivate adaptive behavior long-term and what parents should focus on instead. We'd like to begin today's webinar by asking two poll questions to our live audience. What typically triggers your child's frustration or outbursts? And in what ways does your child act out? Please select your answers and comment in the text box under the video player to tell us more. For answers to common webinar questions about slides, transcripts, and certificates of attendance, click on the FAQ tab of your webinar screen. If you support the work we're doing here at ADDitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit additudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for ADDitude magazine. If you subscribe today, you will receive our Fall Success at School issue with lots of great advice from experts to help your child thrive. So sign up for ADDitude magazine for yourself or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. Click the magazine tab on screen to learn more. Finally, the sponsor of this webinar is Brain Balance. When your child, teen, or young adult is struggling and you know they're capable of so much more, it can be overwhelming, especially when it feels like no one else sees their potential. But Brain Balance parents know better. They know better academic and mental health outcomes, and they know happier children. They also know they're surrounded by a community of supportive parents and Brain Balance staff ready to work together, hand in hand, to make a positive impact in their child's life. There is hope and a better way forward. Scan the QR code on screen or visit brainbalancecenters.com/ADDitudeMag to contact Brain Balance's support team and get started. ADDitude thanks our sponsors for supporting our webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. So without further ado, I'm so pleased to welcome Dr. Ross Greene. Thank you so much for joining us today and for leading this discussion.
Carol, thanks for inviting me to do this. I'm very happy to be here to give people a intro to collaborative and proactive solutions. I'm sure many people who are joining us are already familiar with the model. What I want to point out on this title page here is, number one, the name of the model, Collaborative and Proactive Solutions. Number two, what's the subtitle of the subtitle there in blue? Meeting kids where they're at. For me, that's the definition of good parenting. For me, that's the definition of good teaching. It's hard, and I'm always encouraging parents and educators to think about what's making it hard for them to meet a particular kid where they're at, whether it's their own or a student in their classroom. That's the definition, meeting kids where they're at. And I think that when you're solving problems collaboratively and proactively with a kid, that is exactly what you're doing. Of course, the subtitle is moving from power and control to collaboration and problem solving. A lot of the interventions we use with kids with ADHD or any other kid who's struggling do resonate from the power and control methodology mentality. That's how I was trained. I think teaching kids to collaborate on solving the problems that are causing their concerning behaviors is a much more important life skill. And it's a life skill that they do not acquire just by having us reward them or punish them. So I know there's just mammoth amounts of information out there about how to help kids who are struggling, and especially those who are communicating that they're struggling through their concerning behavior. You're going to hear about the collaborative and proactive solutions model today. Good chance that it's quite different from other things that you've heard. There are some very big differences. Number one, in this model, you're actually not focused on a kid's concerning behavior. And as you've already heard, you're not focused on modifying it. So this is not a reward and punishment model. This is not a model that bases its interventions on adult-imposed consequences. What you're focused on instead in this model are the problems that are causing those concerning behaviors. In this model, we call them unsolved problems. They're also known as problems that have yet to be solved, also known as problems that are waiting to be solved. How do we know the problem is still waiting to be solved? Because it's still causing concerning behavior. But we've just arrived at the first pivotal moment of the talk. Yes, it is unsolved problems that are causing concerning behavior. So if you're wondering, what's causing my child's concerning behavior? Yes, there's popular answers like, well, it's the ADHD, or it's the oppositional defiant disorder. Those don't cause anything. Those might make it harder for a kid to meet expectations. Of course, we're going to have to identify exactly what those expectations are. The synonym for unsolved problem is unmet expectation. Any expectation a kid is having difficulty reliably meeting qualifies as an unsolved problem. So my understanding is that most of you are parents. I'm going to give home examples of unsolved problems here. Of course, I can't be exhaustive because that would take the rest of my time. But here's a sampling of what I'm talking about. Difficulty brushing teeth before going to bed at night. Difficulty getting off the Xbox to come in for dinner. Difficulty getting off the Xbox to go to bed at night. Difficulty getting off the Xbox to engage in any other much more meaningful aspect of life. Difficulty eating what mom or dad has made for dinner. Difficulty being in bed by 9 p.m. with the lights and electronics off. I could go on forever. You basically get the idea. Those are the kinds of expectations we're talking about. And those expectations, when a kid is having difficulty meeting them, cause a frustration response, otherwise known as concerning behavior. Those two are synonyms. Concerning behavior is a frustration response. Now, we could slice and dice those concerning behaviors. My usual way of slicing and dicing them is into two categories, lucky and unlucky. What are lucky ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations? Whining, pouting, sulking, withdrawing, crying. I could go on, just a sampling. Why are those ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations lucky? Those ways aren't going to get you popped into timeout. Not going to get you held in from recess, not going to get you held after school, not going to get you grounded, not going to get you a detention, suspension, expulsion, not going to get you hit. Still very popular in the United States in both our families and our public schools in 17 states still, where corporal punishment is still legal and practiced. Not going to get you pinned to the ground by 2 to 4 adults, what's known as a restraint. Not going to get you thrown into a locked or blocked closet-sized room, what's known as a seclusion. But best of all, those lucky ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations are highly likely to elicit empathy, nurturance, support from your caregivers. Lucky you, kid. That's not the variety of kid I've been working with for the last over 40 years in one way or another. I've been working with the unlucky variety. What are unlucky ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations? You already know, but here's a sampling. Screaming, swearing, hitting, spitting, kicking, biting, throwing, destroying, running. Why are those ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations unlucky? Those ways are more likely to get you popped into timeout, held in from recess, held after school, grounded, detention, suspension, expulsion, hit, pinned, thrown. But worst of all, those ways of communicating that you're having difficulty meeting certain expectations are far less likely to elicit empathy, nurturance, support from your caregivers. Even though, thanks to the field of developmental psychopathology, we've known for a very long time that whether a kid is communicating that they're having difficulty meeting expectations in ways that are lucky or unlucky, the behavior is communicating the exact same thing. There's an expectation the kid is having difficulty meeting. And when you're implementing collaborative and proactive solutions, you are focused on those unmet expectations, not on the concerning behaviors that are being caused by them. If you're focused on concerning behaviors, all you're going to want to do is modify them. If you're focused on unsolved problems, what you're going to want to do instead is solve them. The problem solving is collaborative, meaning the kid is fully engaged in the process of solving the problem. This is an ask the kid model. One of the 2 key mantras of this model, we'll come to the second one on the next slide, is ask the kid. In this model, the kid is your number 1 source of information on what's making it hard for the kid to meet a particular expectation. I'm always telling caregivers, be prepared for jaw-dropping moments when you ask the kid, when you discover that what you thought was getting in the kid's way is not what's getting in the kid's way. Not only is the kid involved in helping us know what's making it hard for them to meet an expectation, they are integrally involved in helping us come up with a solution. That's huge. But I do get an interesting question when I'm talking about this collaboration business. How are you going to hold the kid accountable if you're not using consequences? I got to tell you, I've actually never viewed consequences as a particularly good way of holding a kid accountable. When you're consequencing a kid, the kid is the passive recipient of your imposed consequences, your solutions, no thinking, no engagement. You want to hold a kid accountable? Engage them in the process of solving the problems that are causing their concerning behaviors. That's accountability. Not only is the problem solving collaborative, it's also proactive. This is hard. So much of what we teach educators and parents to do is about what they should do in the heat of the moment, when a concerning behavior has already caused a kid to become escalated, when an unmet expectation has already caused a kid to become escalated, and when concerning behavior may already be in process. Boy, that's late. When we are dealing with a kid who's already frustrated, you're late. You don't want to be late. You want to be early. Being early is a huge part of what we try to do in this model. Otherwise, you're just spending a great deal of time putting out brush fires, but you're not addressing the cause of the brush fires, the unsolved problems that are causing them. So mantra number 2 of this model is don't be late. You want to notice. You want to really start noticing. You might be noticing already when you're late. And we want to turn that around so that you're early instead of late. I should mention the behavior is late. And when you're focusing on modifying behavior, you're focused on what's late, the unsolved problems that are causing that behavior. That's what's early. And when you identify them using an instrument that I'm going to introduce you to shortly, the stage is set for you to be almost exclusively proactive. What that instrument, it's known as the assessment of skills and unsolved problems, is going to help you do is number 1, identify the skills your child is struggling with, the skills that are critical for helping human beings, kids included, respond to problems and frustrations adaptively. One of the most exciting developments in research, and the ADHD field has been a very big part of this. One of the most exciting developments in psychology, in my opinion, over the last 40 to 50 years, is that we now know it's not poor motivation that's causing kids to exhibit concerning behavior. It's skills that they're struggling with, skills like flexibility, adaptability, frustration tolerance, problem solving, emotion regulation, skills, not motivation. Those are the lenses we want you to be wearing. If you're wearing those lenses, then it really doesn't make any sense at all. For why would we would be trying to motivate your child to do better when through rewards and punishments when motivation is not what is at issue in the first place? No. Poor frustration responses are about skills. And you just heard the global skills that are typically coming into play. The assessment of skills and unsolved problems is going to help you figure out what those skills are in the case of your individual child. The assessment of skills and unsolved problems is also going to help you identify all of the expectations your kid is having difficulty reliably meeting. Even if your child can meet those expectations sometimes and not others, if all you've been focused on is their concerning behavior, their frustration responses, then those unsolved problems often have gone unidentified. And if they're not identified, they can't be solved. But if you identify them proactively, using the assessment of skills and unsolved problems, then you can start solving them proactively so that you won't be late. In other words, once you identify a kid's skills and unsolved problems, your efforts to help your kid can be almost exclusively proactive. We always say it's skills and unsolved problem. That's the information that's been missing when we are over-focused on a kid's concerning behavior. We got to cover this. This is the mentality of the CPS model. Kids do well if they can. The belief that if your kid could do well, they would do well. And that if they're not doing well, something must be getting in their way. What's getting in their way? What the research tells us is getting in their way: skills, unsolved problems. But kids do well if they can has not been the leading mentality for a very long time. What have we been thinking for a very long time? What's been our mentality? Kids do well if they wanna. Kids do all if they can and kids do all if they want are two completely different mentalities. They have completely different implications for what you're doing to try to help this kid, and whether you're being collaborative, meaning you're helping with them, or unilateral, where you're doing something to them. Let's think about kids do all if they want to very briefly. If you have a kids do all if they want to mentality, and you're working with a kid who's not doing well, then the reason you think your kid is not doing well is because they don't want to do well. Why would they not want to do well? Well, here are some of the very popular, but at least in my view, untrue characterizations of kids who are struggling. They're seeking attention by doing poorly. They're manipulating us by doing poorly. They're coercing us into capitulating to their wishes by doing poorly. They're unmotivated. That's why they're doing poorly. They're testing limits. That's why they're doing poorly. I haven't said any of those things about a kid in over 35 years. Let me explain why not on a few of them. The kid is seeking attention by doing poorly. You mean the kid has the skills to seek attention the right way and is choosing to seek attention the wrong way because that's making their life go better? I've never seen it. I'm over 2,000 kids with concerning behaviors in at this point in my career. I have yet to come across a kid who had the skills to seek attention the right way, but was choosing to seek attention the wrong way because it was making their life go better. Plus, what very popular intervention is going to make perfect sense if we believe that a kid's concerning behavior is for the purpose of seeking attention? We're going to ignore the kid, what's known as planned ignoring, so as to withdraw all of the attention, all of the reinforcement from the concerning behavior so as to extinguish it. What if that's wrong? What if the kid's concerning behavior is simply the means by which the kid is communicating that there are expectations they're having difficulty meeting? You're not going to want to ignore that. Plus, if we listen to the voices of the neurodivergent community, and I consider that the community that has been most vocal in advocating against punitive exclusionary disciplinary practices, we will hear adult members of that community telling us that the planned ignoring they endured in childhood was experienced by them as harmful. And you know what? That makes sense. If there's another way to accomplish whatever we think we're accomplishing with planned ignoring that doesn't cause harm, we should do it. Plus, planned ignoring isn't going to solve any of the problems that are causing the behaviors that we've been so busy ignoring in the first place. Let me jump down to unmotivated. We can't cover all 5 because of time. Do you know that I would never say unmotivated about anybody, ever? Why not? Here's what I know. Once we identify the skills that are making it hard for an individual to respond adaptively to problems and frustrations, once we identify the problems and frustrations they're responding maladaptively to, unmotivated makes no sense whatsoever. Plus, if we listen to the voices of the neurodivergent community, once again, we will hear adult members of that community telling us that the sticker charts they endured in childhood were experienced by them as harmful. They were the kid who was identified as at a very early age as the kid who didn't get the sticker. If there's another way to achieve whatever we think we're achieving with a sticker that doesn't cause harm, we should do it. Plus, not getting the sticker isn't going to solve any of the problems that are causing the kid not to get the sticker in the first place. Some of you might be thinking, aren't stickers good for the kids who are doing well? No, they're not doing well for a sticker. They're doing well because they can. And why would we want to move a kid from intrinsic motivation to extrinsic motivation anyhow? And of course, key theme number 5 in the CPS model is doing well is preferable. For me, a statement of the obvious. Of course, doing well is preferable. That's why most of us do well most of the time. We prefer it. So do kids with concerning behavior. Kids with concerning behavior prefer doing well too. The difference between a well-behaved kid and a kid with concerning behavior is not that the well-behaved kid prefers doing well and the kid with concerning behavior doesn't. That's incorrect. It's that the well-behaved kid has skills that the kid with concerning behavior is struggling with. Once again, flexibility, adaptability, frustration tolerance, problem solving, emotion regulation. Remember, in this model, you're not modifying behavior. You're solving the problems that are causing them because you see it's only unsolved problems that cause concerning behaviors. Solved problems don't. So let's talk about, I've just talked about what I wouldn't do. I'm going to skip this slide. What would I do differently? And the nice thing is I've got about 15 minutes to tell you all about that. The two things you got to get good at in this model, if you're a caregiver, parent, educator, staff in a treatment facility, anybody, identifying a kid's skills and unsolved problems and solving those problems collaboratively and proactively. That's what you got to get good at. I think a sticker chart is easy. I think identifying skills and unsolved problems is slightly harder, at least until you get good at it, because you're not used to it. I think putting a kid in timeout is easy, but many of you know that it's not that easy and often inflames things. Solving problems collaboratively and proactively is a little harder until you get good at it. And then it's not harder anymore. Now, just by way of repetition, why are we identifying skills and unsolved problems? Because that's what's going to make the entire enterprise proactive instead of reactive. Don't be late. Why are we identifying skills again? Because that's what's going to help caregivers view this kid through much more compassionate, much more accurate, much more productive lenses. Skills, not motivation. Why are we identifying unsolved problems? So we know what problems we can be working on instead of what behaviors we could be modifying. Why are we solving those problems collaboratively and proactively? Because that's what's going to promote a partnership between you and this kid. This is not enemies. This is not adversaries. This is teammates. This is partners. That's what's going to engage kids in solving the problems that are affecting their lives. I'm always asking the question, why would you want to leave the kid out of the loop on that? That's what's going to help you and the kid come up with solutions that tend to be a whole lot more effective and a whole lot more durable because you're not flying solo. And perhaps best of all, when you're solving problems collaboratively and proactively, you're not just solving problems, which is a big deal all by itself. You're not just improving behaviors, big deal all by itself. You're not just improving your relationship with the kid. You're not just improving communication with the kid. You're also enhancing the skills that the kid was struggling with just by solving problems, just through the process of solving problems collaboratively and proactively. You should see a bump in a positive direction in flexibility, adaptability, frustration tolerance, problem solving, and emotion regulation. Okay, so here it is. This is first on your to-do list. This is the assessment of skills and unsolved problems. 2024 rendition. It used to be called the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems, but out of respect for the neurodivergent community, which took the word lagging out. They let us know that they felt lagging had a neurotypical reference point. They were right. And, you know, they're kind of tired of people telling them they're lagging anything. Good for them. Otherwise, structurally, the ASEP is the same as the ALSEP. Skills in the top section, you're going to be checking them off. That's both the fast and easy way, the easy part of completing the ASEP. Unsolved problems in the bottom section. The ASEP is available on the Lives in the Balance website, the website of my nonprofit, in a fillable format so that you can type instead of write and save and share electronically if you choose. It's also free. No, I have no proprietary interest. We don't have time for me to teach you how to use it. But if you get on the Lives in the Balance website, lives, L-I-V-E-S, in the balance.org. I'm sure many of you have been on that website before. And go to the Our Solution section, and then scroll down to Parents, if you're a parent, Educators, if you're an educator. You'll find our guided tour. And in section 2 of the guided tour, there's a 30-minute video teaching you how to use this instrument. Remember, it's going to make the entire enterprise proactive. It's going to help you not be late. Huge. The ASEP. It's a game changer. Oops, I just went backwards. Once you identify your child's unsolved problems, and don't be surprised, by the way, if there are 20 or 30 of them, they do tend to accumulate and they don't get solved. This is huge. Often, one of the best things I do for parents is I help them prioritize because they've been busy trying to solve everything at the same time, which is the surefire way to ensure that nothing at all gets solved. Took a long time for that pile of unsolved problems to accumulate. Going to take a little while for us to get through them. You're never going to be working on more than 3 unsolved problems at any particular point in time. So if you got 25, you're only working on 3 of them. How do you decide which 3 to start with? Here's your algorithm. Safety first. Any unsolved problem that's setting in motion safety issues, high priority. Safety is a big deal. If you don't have safety issues, you're either going with frequency, the unsolved problems that are setting in motion concerning behavior most often, or gravity, the unsolved problems having the greatest negative impact on your kid's life or on the lives of other people. You get to pick 3. Remember, if you try to solve them all at once, you'll end up solving none of them at all. Very few of us can work on more than 3 things at a time. So I know that once people learn about this model, that are in a hurry, get going, get every problem solved in a week, it's not going to happen. I can assure you of this. If your kid has 20 or 25 unsolved problems, you're not going to have to solve all of them because some are going to solve by solving others. If you got 20 or 25, I'm guessing you're going to end up solving 6, 7, 8, because some are going to solve by solving others, but not if you're trying to solve them all at the same time. Now, I will say this. Something interesting happens when people complete the ASEP. They start getting overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the task at hand. You're only working on 3 at a time. Don't get overwhelmed. Let me tell you what's even more overwhelming than a long list of unsolved problems. Having no idea what those unsolved problems are, and therefore being relegated to focusing exclusively on concerning behaviors, which are late. And as you now know, behavior modification strategies aren't problem-solving strategies and weren't designed to be. Interesting. Some interesting questions tend to pop up when I'm going through the ASEP with parents. First of all, they're a little overwhelmed. You just heard what helps this be less overwhelming. You're not going to have to solve them all, and you're not going to be solving all of them at the same time. But here's some other interesting reactions. Wow, I didn't realize there were this many unsolved problems. Good that we now realize there are this many unsolved problems. Can the kid actually meet all of these expectations? Apparently not. Otherwise, because kids do all if they can, they would be. How strongly do I feel about all of these expectations? I mean, if my kid's having difficulty meeting 20 or 25 of them, I can't feel strongly about all of them. Right. We're going to help you figure out which ones you feel strongly about. Safety first. And which ones you're going to be letting go of for now. I'll be talking about that next. But here's another instrument you'll find on the Lives in the Balance website. It's the problem-solving plan. It's intended to help you keep track of the unsolved problems you're working on right now, and the ones by process of elimination you are not going to be trying to solve right now, who's trying to solve them, your progress in solving them. It's also available, I think I just said this, it's also free, but it's on the website in an editable, fillable format. Maybe I didn't say that. Once a problem is solved, it comes off the problem-solving plan, and another one arrives from the assessment of skills and unsolved problems to take its place. This is how we're going to help you keep track, how we're going to help you keep it organized, how we're going to keep problems from slipping through the cracks. All right. Last question. How are you going to solve those problems? You got three options. They're called Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. What I've done here is I've taken the many different ways in which adults handle problems with kids, and I've reduced them to three basic options. ABC provides a very nice shorthand for thinking about how you're currently handling an unsolved problem and how you might choose to handle it instead. Plan C is where you're putting a particular expectation on hold, at least for now. Many people hear that and they think giving in. There's no giving in the entire model. Giving up, no giving up in the entire model. Prioritizing, there is prioritizing in this model. Plan C is what you're doing with the unsolved problems you have consciously, deliberately, and proactively decided, we're not working on that one right now. We got bigger fish to fry. You might also use Plan C for stabilization purposes, because any unsolved problem that's been removed for now won't set in motion concerning behavior. But now a concept that I haven't mentioned yet, expectation management. Plan C is also what you do with the unsolved problems you've decided are out of range for your kid at this point in their development. We really don't want to be putting expectations on kids that are out of range at this point in their development. That's just going to cause concerning behavior. That leaves us with only two other plans, A and B. Both represent a way to solve a problem with a kid. There's just one massive difference between them. With Plan A, you're solving the problem unilaterally. With Plan B, you're solving the problem collaboratively. I think you know which one you're using in this model, and that's going to be our last slide since I'm skipping this one. There are three steps. I might be a minute over my 35-minute time limit here. There's three steps that are involved in solving a problem collaboratively. They are called the empathy step, the define it all concerns step, and the invitation step. I always tell people the names of the steps don't matter. The ingredients matter a lot. What are you doing in the empathy step? You are gathering information from your kid about what's making it hard for them to meet a particular expectation. Not in the heat of the moment, proactively, because you already did the ASEP and you already did the problem-solving plan. Let me give you an example of an empathy step. I was doing a webinar with a father who did father podcasts maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And he was telling me about his 3-year-old daughter who was having difficulty, as fate would have it, brushing her teeth before going to bed at night. But he was telling me he thought he already knew what was making it hard for his daughter to brush her teeth before going to bed at night. He was sure it was the taste of the toothpaste. So he's telling me this story. 7 or 8 different tubes of toothpaste later, flavors, she's still having difficulty brushing her teeth before going to bed at night. So he's telling me he finally did plan B. I'm thinking, you finally did plan B? I could have saved you a whole lot of time if you'd have done plan B in the first place. Here's what the empathy step sounded like. I've noticed you've been having difficulty brushing your teeth before going to bed at night. What's up? Here's what she said, 3 years old. When you brush my teeth with the electric toothbrush, it gets water all over my face. And I hate getting water all over my face when you're brushing my teeth. I said to the father, now there's a concern 7 or 8 different flavors of toothpaste would never address. The define it all concern step is where the parent is getting their concern on the table. Us adults have very important concerns. Regrettably, we often try to get them addressed through use of plan A. Now you're getting the exact same concern addressed through use of plan B. Same concern, completely different approach to getting it addressed. What were the father's concerns? If we don't brush your teeth before you go to bed at night, you could get cavities. Kind of hurts to get cavities filled, and to tell you the truth, I'd rather not have to spend the money if I don't have to. 2 sets of concerns on the table. No turning back now. Time for the invitation. The invitation is where the kid and caregiver are collaborating on a solution. But, and this is the last important thing I'm going to say, a solution that must meet 2 criteria. Got to be realistic. Both parties got to be able to do what they're agreeing to do. And it's got to be mutually satisfactory, meaning the solution truly addresses the concerns of both parties. Here's what I've been saying a lot lately, and world history, including current world history, bears me out on it. If the solution is not realistic and mutually satisfactory, I promise you, this problem is still unsolved. Here's what the invitation sounded like, and then I'll stop and take some questions. I wonder if there's a way for us to make sure that we don't get water on your face while I'm brushing your teeth. That was the kids' concerns. And also make sure that you don't get cavities, because it kind of hurts to get cavities filled, and I'd rather not spend the money if I don't have to. Believe it or not, you're then giving the kid the first crack at the solution. You got any ideas? Not because it's the kid's job to solve the problem, it's y'all's job to solve the problem, but it's very good strategy. It lets the kid know beyond a shadow of a doubt you're actually interested in their ideas. The little 3-year-old said, can we wrap a towel around my face when you're brushing my teeth before I go to bed at night, and then I won't get cavities, and we also won't get water on my face? Who won? Both. Who lost? Nobody. Whose authority was undermined? Nobody's. You get the idea. If you need more information about any of this, because I realize this was super fast, the Lives in the Balance website is the place to turn. Let's do questions.
Thank you, Dr. Greene, for such a powerful and informative presentation. And I love the example of getting the child to brush her teeth. That was awesome. Before we start the Q&A, I'd like to thank Brain Balance once more for sponsoring this webinar. I'd also like to share the final results from today's poll question. We asked, what typically triggers your child's frustration or outbursts? 22% said transitions or changes in routine. 18% said unmet expectations. 17% said fatigue or hunger. Another 17% said sensory overload. 11% said academic pressure. and another 11% said social interactions. Now to your questions. I'm a parent with ADHD. I get triggered by my son's outbursts and often can't control my big reaction and impulses. What strategies can I try to remain calm? And what's the most important thing to do after making this parenting mistake?
I don't have amazing strategies for helping people stay calm once they're already in the heat of the moment. What you just heard is how I help people get out of the heat of the moment. The heat of the moment says that you're already late. And that puts you in a very tough position because, quite frankly, it's actually extremely difficult to remain calm when a kid is losing it on you. I think it may actually be an unrealistic expectation, which might be why you are still asking that question. My goal would be to get you out of the heat of the moment. 99.9% of the time. Let's have you start solving problems proactively so that your kid doesn't end up in the heat of the moment over them anyways. The combination of being proactive and solving problems should take care of most of what you're talking about. I actually don't have a lot of faith that if all things remain equal, there's anybody who can give you great strategies for helping you stay calm in the heat of the moment with all of those problems still unsolved.
Okay. Another question is, when my child gets explosive, how can I maintain safety for everyone in the household? What should I be doing?
There's another heat of the moment question. There are crisis management programs out there that can teach you how to defuse, de-escalate, and keep everybody safe. They have been ubiquitous in schools and treatment facilities, to my great dismay, by the way, because those are interventions for what people should do when it's already late. I quite frankly think that this is tragic, that what we've mostly been teaching people and mostly been expecting from people is what they do in the heat of the moment and how to stay calm in the heat of the moment. I think that that is bass-ackwards, as the expression goes. We should be teaching people what to do so they don't find themselves in the heat of the moment in the first place. The heat of the moment is not a given. It's not guaranteed. Lots and lots of families don't find themselves in the heat of the moment anymore. And why not? They identified those unsolved problems proactively. They solved a bunch of them proactively. They put some of them on hold until they were ready to start solving those. My goal is to keep you out of the heat of the moment, not to come up with yet another way for you to try to stay calm once you're in the heat of the moment.
Okay. Someone writes, my child says he doesn't know why he's feeling explosive, or at least he can't communicate it. How can I help him understand?
Well, number one, we have to write a good unsolved problem. And you'll learn about this in that video on the Lives in the Balance website. That's not me trying to get you on the website. It's just something I knew I wouldn't have time to cover in a talk this brief. But it's what your child is being explosive about that are the unsolved problems. Remember, I gave you some examples of unsolved problems at the very beginning of the talk. So you don't want to say to your kid, I've noticed you have difficulty being explosive. What's up? You want to ask, I've noticed you have difficulty coming in for dinner, turning the Xbox off to come in for dinner. What's up? That's way more specific. And there is an outstanding chance you're not going to get, I don't know, in response to that one. So the wording of the unsolved problem is critical here. We don't want to ask about global things like being explosive, or I was listening to the things that cause your kids to get upset. Transitions is too vague. What transition? Difficulty, difficulty getting off the Xbox to come in for dinner would actually be a great example of a transition that a child is having difficulty meeting. You're not going to say, I've noticed you have difficulty making transitions. What's up? That guarantees I don't know, because you just asked about 37 transitions in one sentence. You want to be asking about specific transitions. then you're much more likely to get info. If you don't, even though your unsolved problem is worded in a very specific way, what you'll learn about in the video, if your kid has no idea, you can guess. If your kid isn't responding even to the guesses, I tend to use a 5-finger method to see if a kid will respond that way. 5 means very true. 4 means pretty true. 3 means sort of true. 2 means not very true. 1 means not true at all. I make a guess. All the kid's got to hold up is fingers to let me know how true my guess is. If fingers are too much for the kid, if 5's too many for the kid, I'll go with 3. If 3's too much, I'll go with the usual 2. If fingers are not the kid's gig, I'll write true on one sticky pad and false on another, put them in front of the kid. All they've got to do is tap. As you can tell, in this model, we've thought a great deal about how to get information from kids who are either reluctant in giving that information, having difficulty giving that information, or are non-speaking. We don't have an enormous amount of time to talk about all of that, but you'll find all of that in our resources on the Lives in the Balance website. Our newest section on the website, the newest section coming, is how to do this model with kids who are non-speaking. That'll be sometime in the fall. But the one we just got done about a month or two ago was how to use CPS with very young kids. You're going to see incredible videos of 3, 4, and 5-year-olds solving problems collaboratively. This is what we've thought about a great deal, because we don't want to say that there's a kid who can't participate in the process of solving the problems that are affecting their lives. Every kid can participate in one way or another in that process.
Speaking of young children, this question is, my child is having tantrums to test boundaries such as more TV time or more snacks. How do I draw a line between possibly reinforcing bad habits by collaborating and over-negotiating versus responding effectively?
Oof. I don't think your kid is testing limits. I think your kid is exhibiting a frustration response. Sounds like we might still be on the fence about what the behavior means. I think solving problems collaboratively and proactively is an effective response. I'm biased, of course, but I think it is the effective response. And here's what I mean. Yeah, you could respond to tantrums by putting the kid in timeout. You could have them not get a sticker. You could do some other form of punishment. But whatever problem caused your kid to tantrum in the first place, and yes, a tantrum is a frustration response, that problem will remain unsolved if all you're doing is consequencing the concerning behaviors that are being caused by those unsolved problems. Remember, it's only unsolved problems that cause concerning behaviors. Solved problems don't, which is why many parents, once they start solving problems collaboratively and proactively, stop even thinking about consequences, not because they're allergic to them, but because they don't need them anymore. And in many instances, found that those consequences actually inflamed things and made things worse.
A school counselor writes, how can I best help elementary age children in a school setting who are having difficulty with self-regulation? I'm seeing more and more of this in school, and I sense a lot of pain and frustration in this behavior.
There's a lot of pain and frustration in the behavior. You're seeing a lot of frustration responses. I would say that frustration responses peaked post-COVID. So we're seeing a lot more of it. We should be asking ourselves in a school, why are we seeing more frustration responses in our students? We should also ask ourselves, why are so many kids not showing up? Also, why are so many educators quitting the profession? I got a funny feeling we're putting expectations on a lot of people in schools, not just kids, that are unrealistic. But everything you heard about during this webinar is just as applicable in schools as it is in families and treatment facilities. I know that my examples were home oriented because my sense was that we were going to have mostly parents in here. Good way to get the ball rolling, and this is not me trying to get you to buy a book, is to do a book study on this model using Lost at School, one of my favorites. Do a book study, get the ball rolling. Think about what your barriers are going to be to moving away from traditional school discipline, which is very oriented toward punishment often, and moving towards something that will be much more helpful to all concerned, not just your kids, your staff as well. Everything I just talked about, just as relevant.
Okay. A mom writes, my son isn't exactly explosive, but he can be very disrespectful. How should I handle this?
Disrespect is a frustration response as well. I don't limit the application of this model to unlucky, concerning behaviors. And I'm not sure whether I'd put disrespect in lucky or unlucky. Doesn't really matter what it falls into. You're going to be handling it exactly the same. I don't handle lucky concerning behaviors or frustration responses any differently than I handle unlucky frustration responses. I would think of disrespect as a frustration response. I would look at the unsolved problems, make your list using the ASEP that are causing disrespect, and get started on everything you heard about during this webinar. Now, this was a brief introduction to the model, so I would also encourage you to hop on the Lives in the Balance website, go to that guided tour, so you can see lots of videos of what Plan B looks like, both in school for our school counselor who just asked, and for parents. Lots of videos and always more in the pipeline.
Okay, this question is about school. My child struggles at school a lot. She either kicks or pushes kids when they do or say something she doesn't like, or if they get near one of her close friends. What can I do?
Talk to somebody at the school who you think will be receptive to this model. Get them to complete an ASEP on your daughter. What you just named was a bunch of concerning behaviors with a little hint of unsolved problems. We got to identify those unsolved problems. You remember key theme number one? That's why it was number one. We have got to move away from primarily talking about kids' concerning behaviors and move over to talking about the problems that are causing them, or those problems will continue to be unidentified and unsolved. So find somebody in the building who you think is going to be receptive, see if you can get an ASEP done, turn them on if they're willing to the guided tour for educators on the Lives in the Balance website. And if they are less willing than you would like, contact us at Lives in the Balance and we'll see if we can help you out.
How do you get an apathetic, skeptical teenager to work collaboratively with you?
You know, apathetic teenagers have unsolved problems too. I find that apathy, as well as disenfranchisement and alienation, come from having lots of problems that have remained unsolved. Apathy sometimes is the byproduct of lack of hope that things will ever get better, lack of hope that an adult will ever be able to help you. My guidance would be no different. And by the way, the fact that we're dealing with a teenager here doesn't really change things dramatically. I know my example was with a 3-year-old, but believe it or not, those 3 steps are exactly what you're doing with a 17-year-old as well. Do the ASEP. My answers are always the same, as you can tell. Do the ASEP. Figure out what the unsolved problems are. Prioritize. Your 17-year-old might start looking a whole lot less apathetic. Of course, I don't know your situation at all, but your 17-year-old might start looking a whole lot less apathetic if we weren't talking with him or her or them anymore about their concerning behavior, but instead about problems or expectations they've been struggling with for a very long time. I often find that kids who people tell me won't talk do talk once we change the subject, not concerning behavior, expectations they're having difficulty reliably meeting. That often is a game changer in and of itself.
Wow. Someone asked, do you have any suggestions for getting the school on board? Our school is pushing the sticker chart and prize box for elementary
lots of
school.
Still do. Yep, lots of schools still do. My answer would probably be the same as the one before. Find somebody in the building who you think is going to be receptive to doing things differently, and let them tell you how to navigate the politics and the hierarchy of the school, so as to do the right thing by your kid and a bunch of others as well. And once again, if that turns out to be more of a struggle than you had hoped, contact us at Lives in the Balance, and we'll try to help you out.
Dr. Greene, unfortunately, that has to be our last question because we're out of time, but we thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise with our ADHD community. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. And once again, thanks for inviting me to do this.
And thank you to today's listeners. If you would like to access the event resources, visit ADDitudemag.com and search podcast 515. The slides and recording are posted a few hours after each live webinar. If you're listening in replay mode, simply click on the episode description. Please know that our full library of ADDitude webinars is available as a podcast. It's called the ADHD Experts Podcast, and it's available on all streaming platforms. We hope to see you again next week for our free webinar on the signs of ADHD in preschool-aged children and effective interventions. Make sure you don't miss future ADDitude webinars, articles, or research updates by signing up to receive our free email newsletters at ADDitudemag.com/newsletters. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.